It's always refreshing to discover something new and unique about World of Warcraft. We all have the places, zones, dungeons we've been to dozens or even hundreds of times, but do you really know every detail, every secret that can be found there? Westfall is a zone looked at fondly by Alliance players, a vast coastal plain filled with farmland, and more recently, the Defias Brotherhood. We've all been here, exploring nearly every nook and cranny as we level up, fight against the Defias, and piece together a few details of the overall human storyline. Today, though, I'm here to introduce a darker, much more mysterious element of the lore that most players have overlooked: the forgotten undead of Westfall, a blight on the land that complicates things for everybody else here. When the sun goes down, it's not just bandits and coyotes you'll need to watch out for. As always, thank you for the fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. For the most part, Westfall is a rugged, lawless place, but it's not a zone that we as players associate with the supernatural, at least not normally. Far below the golden surface of farms and fields is where we can find our first clue that something is off, and it's one that many players usually do encounter, even if they don't try to make sense of it. Beneath the town of Moonbrook in southern Westfall, the Dead Mines are the hideout of the infamous Edwin Van Cleef and his Defias allies, a network of mining tunnels and industrial chambers that fuels the Defias insurgency. One of these tunnels, though, is not like the others. In a secluded corner of the outer mining network, ghostly blue fires flicker in the dark, illuminating not bandits or beasts, but undead, shambling ghouls and skeletons trapped down here in an isolated corner of the dungeon. This is quite a dramatic shift from what you've encountered in the zone so far, above or below ground, but for anyone confused or skeptical as to how these living dead ended up down here, we're going to get to the bottom of it. There are 2 quests dealing with this section of the Dead Mines, both given by the dwarf Wilder Thistlenettle in Stormwind City. We were deep in a vast mine in Westfall, hidden beneath a barn in Moonbrook. No clue where these stinkin' thieving types came from. Anyway, the mine tunnel collapsed on us. I got out, but the others haven't been heard from. If you could look for my brother, I'd be thankful. He always carried his Explorers League badge. If you can't find him, that badge would at least give me some peace of mind. Wilder asks you to find his brother's badge and some Miners' Union cards, and with the added context, it is interesting to speculate on the series of events that got us here. It seems a part of the mine underneath Moonbrook was an Explorers League mining claim for some time following the Second War, possibly leased out by the Kingdom of Stormwind to stimulate gold production during a period of recovery. Then, when the Defias took over and turned Moonbrook into a ghost town, the dwarven crew down below was caught off guard, with many of them perishing in the chaos of a cave-in. It seems the Defias, or maybe the undead miners themselves, cleared the rubble, and now the ghouls continue toiling away down here in the mines, stuck in their earthly purpose. As I was investigating this anomaly, what really stuck with me was the why. Why here of all places would these victims rise from the dead and continue to haunt the tunnels? Hold on to that for a minute. This is the example most players are familiar with, and those undead dynamiters are definitely not to be underestimated. However, there are a few other undead incursions in Westfall that you may or may not know about. These are some of the only examples of dynamic day-night changes to the open world, and I really thought this was neat when I first learned about it. Above ground, here in the town of Moonbrook, the graveyard grows restless at night, with the carrion vultures being replaced by ghouls. This gives the town a much more sinister feel, with the looters and pillagers of the Defias now standing just a few yards from the undead. Another curious discovery. There is one other anomaly to keep track of as the sun sets off the coast of Westfall, or rather a pair of them. At 8 p.m. server time, and continuing on into the night, the rare undead Leprethis can be found at 2 different locations on the map, flanked by a pair of generic ghouls. The first spot is probably the one visited by the majority of players, a small graveyard just to the west of the Jengalode mine, right along the road. Curiously, the trio doesn't move from this location, only leaving the fences when attacking a player. The second location is one I didn't even know existed until recently. East of the town of Moonbrook, a small gravesite can be found by hiking up into the hills, and the trio of ghouls descends from here in the evening and meanders across Westfall to the border of Duskwood. From here, they head back and patrol the dust plains in a random sort of way. The name Leprithis is likely a reference to leprosy, the real-life bacterial disease that can damage skin and nerves. The rare can drop 2 unique pieces of loot, the Ghoul Fingers glove item and Ghoul Fang, a unique 2-handed sword, making it a worthwhile hunt for some players, though you do have to contend with both a time of day requirement and the chance that someone else will beat you to it. So, we have 3 distinct examples of undead, especially ghouls, existing inside Westfall, but why are they here? This is not a zone associated with dark magic or cursed land, but there has to be an explanation for why these story elements were added in. At first, I thought this could be the dark influence of Duskwood and the necromancer Morbent Fell spreading to a neighboring zone, but that didn't fit quite right. The connection just isn't there. After investigating a bit more though, I cracked the code, and I believe it relates back to one single source, Zanzil's Mixture. Nearly 2 years ago, I published one of my favorite lore theories that you can go check out after this one, but the key point for today is this. Through goblin supply lines, samples of a deadly, mind-controlling poison have made their way from Stranglethorn Vale to Westfall, where the Defias, working with the rogue Claven Mortwake, has been experimenting with this chemical weapon. This is apparent in the Defias drones that patrol Mortwake's tower in the south, the only other example of undead in the zone. I propose the following. What if the undead we see roaming Westfall, and within the Deadmines, are failed experiments by Mortwake to create this wicked type of obedient servant? Consider that all the humanoid victims of Zanzil we see down in Stranglethorn are in fact undead ghouls, the same type we can find in Westfall. Also consider the areas in which we find the ghouls are all places under Defias control, and there could be legitimate reasons for why Mortwake, in all his mad genius scheming, would have tried dispensing early versions of the poison. Van Cleef wants progress made on his underground tunnels? Why not try to raise some unfeeling, around-the-clock excavators? Need to help drive off some brave farmers from their land? Poisoning of those foolish enough to stay and wreaking havoc on their morale might just get the job done. It's likely these examples, while failures from a drone creation perspective, still caused chaos and aided the Defias cause in taking over the zone. It's also certainly a nice coincidence that Leprithis tends to lurk not far from Mortwake's tower, perhaps a lingering pull toward Mortwake and the more intact Defias drones that patrol a short distance away. It's hard to know for certain if the mixture can raise the dead, or if it can only affect living victims, but either way, it's very likely many of the ghouls, the discarded test subjects of a madman, were once some of the folk that used to call Westfall home. This is a dark perspective on a historically pretty tame zone, but it really exposes just how low the Defias were willing to go in order to take their revenge on Stormwind. Luckily, Mortwake is eventually disposed of by Alliance rogues, and the threat of the undead poison here is ended, though it does make you wonder where the new samples players later collect for a goblin in Booty Bay end up going. Anyway, that's all there is to know about the long overlooked undead of Westfall, now revealed as, potentially, a new piece of the Zanzil conspiracy and the many other evil deeds happening here. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to highlight 2 commenters on my old theory video, Liliznia and Muscle Struts, who suggested the undead miners may be tied to Zanzil's poison, so thanks for pointing me in the right direction. A special thank you to my channel members who provide bonus support for these videos, and until next time, may the Force be with you.